Hmm. Howdy, eggs. Today I'm going to be presenting my reusable learning object. It's over basic biosecurity measures for entry-level livestock producers. I own and operate a small show pig business called Resenda Show Pigs. And for me, biosecurity, when I first got in the business about 5 years ago, felt a little bit like a nuisance or an inconvenience. And as I got into this business, I quickly understood its importance. I got burned by a little bit of a disease outbreak that first farrowing season we have. And so that's exactly what this presentation is for. It's for entry level livestock producers. The computer's just a little slow on moving slides, but we'll get through as quick as it can think. All right, so the purpose of this reusable learning object is to educate new livestock producers. Not only that, I think it'd be a very beneficial lesson to teach in like the university level basic animal science classes. And honestly, anybody that's interested about the purpose and importance of implementing biosecurity measures. It's usable in all livestock operations, from poultry to swine, cattle, dairy cattle, small ruminants, and horses. And the intention for this reusable learning object is to be presented by county agents, college professor, or any livestock farmer with plenty of experience. And so probably that's the first hat I put on myself as we go throughout this project. But it's really my main intention is for extension agents that work with AgriLife and whatnot to have this as a tool to be able to educate uh, entry level livestock producers and me as an agriculturalist. I hope it's very usable and reusable because we consistently have a new wave of livestock producers that want to get into the industry and continue to work to feed the entire population there. Learning objective for this RLO. Entry level livestock producers will understand what strategies to implement regarding biosecurities due to understanding the importance of biosecurity to prevent disease outbreak within their operation. I've kind of outlined, obviously, our audience here, entry level livestock producers, our behavior, what biosecurity strategies are worthwhile to implement. A condition you need to understand the importance of biosecurity. There's a little bit of a review on this, but honestly, the expectation is for anybody that's jumping into um, raising livestock would have at least heard of this before. And the degree is to prevent disease outbreak within their operation. And even in our review, we'll talk about how it's to prevent disease from getting out of your operation and infecting other people's herds. Um, what is biosecurity and where is it used today? I thought this was a very, very good definition I got out of an article that's listed there in our references from a crew out of Amsterdam. And a biosecurity measure is the implementation of segregation, hygiene, or a management procedure excluding medically effective feed additives that specifically aim at reducing the probability of the introduction, establishment, survival, or spread of any pathogen to, within, or from the farm operation or geographical area. In summary, biosecurity is implementing any strategy to help reduce the spread of disease in animals. This is particularly a hot topic in the swine industry right now. With the worry of African swine fever and other foreign animal diseases coming over. So, a lot of industries like the National Pork Board are working to educate people to re-implement biosecurity strategy. In addition to swine, it's primarily used in chicken and dairy cattle operations. Why? It's because these animals are most susceptible to disease outbreak due to their confined living conditions. If we think about chicken houses, swine farms, dairy cattle operations, all the animals are really close in their confinement, kind of living on top of each other there. Um, Whereas maybe like most traditional beef cattle herds, cattle are out in the open air grazing. They're not really on top of one another. But there still is strategies we can talk about that would be effective to implement in some grazing type livestock operation. So why is biosecurity so important? Um, the worldwide population needs livestock production as a source of protein to end world hunger. If we think about some cheaper choices of protein like eggs, pork, poultry, we need people that want to go out and farm these types of livestock. And then we can also think about the beef cattle industry or milk and cheese from the dairy industry is very, very important, not only from people just having a business and a livelihood, but in my opinion, it's way more important to feed the population. And that kind of leads into our next point. Uh, any goal of a livestock producer or farmer is to protect people and their health, and that's where we kind of talk about consumer safety. There is some diseases that are zoonotic that can, affect people if consumed in their meat. And then we think about foreign animal disease and livestock health. We talked about African swine fever already, and we can talk about a long list of diseases that would be very detrimental to livestock health. I think another thing about biosecurity is just the perception people have of it in of livestock industry such as PETA that aren't particularly fond of the livestock industry. I think implementing safe biosecurity practices is very, very good for the perception of how livestock are raised. And then tying back to our first point, we need young livestock producers. We need people to stay in business. And disease outbreak can be absolutely detrimental to a business. I know the initial season where I had some minor disease outbreak in my farron house, not the most profitable set of summer pigs I've ever raised. And a lot of it was due to death and health of those baby pigs in there. So, what are key strategies you can implement in your farms today? A big one, and we're going to talk about this on the next slide, controlling access to the livestock and farm. That's going to be putting up fences, having perimeter buffer areas, places where people can disinfect either their vehicles or their shoes or their clothes. This is a huge one. Like I said, we'll talk more about it on the next slide. Sanitation of the clothes you wear around your livestock, the shoes you wear around your livestock, the areas in which they live. Disinfecting ties very similarly to sanitation, disinfecting clothes, making sure you're disinfecting areas. A prime example for me, I have to thoroughly disinfect my farron house and my nursery when I put a new set of baby pigs in there because I'm not quite sure what the last group of baby pigs left behind. Isolation is a huge factor, especially in areas where or operations where people are constantly moving livestock from one place to another. If I go out and buy a show gilt from potentially another breeder, the smart practice for me is to leave her in what we call an isolation barn, where she'll live there for 30 to 60 days. I'll make sure she's free from any major symptoms of disease. I'll vaccinate her within my protocol before I reintroduce her to the herd. For cattle operations, this can be a little bit more challenging when we think about grazing and the cost to feed them, but it can be very, very important to isolate, cows before they re-enter the entire herd. Vaccination is another good one. For me, I work with the vet very closely to develop a vaccination protocol that's relevant to my operation and to the modern day, kind of disease outbreaks and what's kind of trending. Very important, very crucial, just safe animal practice there. Disease testing is one that is honestly hard for me to convince a lot of people to do because a lot of people are will quote unquote be scared of bureaucracy and scared of having a positive test on one of their animals. And I think we should bypass that mindset and worry about the well-being of the livestock. And I know there's a story from a couple of years ago where a gentleman decided in California to test some of his quail that were living in his duck houses, and the quail tested positive for the avian bird flu, and it was detrimental to his livestock business or his farming operation there. But for the well-being of the animals, definitely turned out positive for him. Manure management can be huge, especially when we talk about um, animals raised in confinement. Probably the most popular strategy is for deep pits and lagoons to be implemented on people's properties in order to just remove that fecal matter totally away from where the livestock are eating, sleeping, and drinking. And then the last one I would like to spend some time on is traceability. Uh, Not only tracing your animals and the movement of them, they say the number one risk for disease outbreak is animals that are being moved, but also tracing the people that come onto your operation, where they've been, where they've come from. This can be very, very helpful when we think about foreign animal disease outbreak. This is more talking about our premises and controlling access to the animals in the farm. And I thought this was a relatively simple idea. Don't know what happened to my screen there. Thought this was a really relatively simple example, but a very good learning example, and honestly, a strategy I think all livestock producers should have in place. So we'll talk about this blue line. This is what we call a perimeter buffer area. So this is some sort of gate or fence that's around the entirety of the farm. It's certainly just there to cause things that aren't supposed to be in the farm out, and it can be hard to control. Things such as wild hogs or whatnot, but it can be a very effective strategy. We'll then talk about our line of separation. In this particular instance, it's the walls to the barn. If you're using, an outside housing method, this can be something like a gate or a rope directly to the point of contact to the animal. Right here, we then have our diamond. This is our vehicle cleaning and disinfecting zone. Any vehicle that's coming onto your operation probably has a reason to go onto a different operation. So cleaning and disinfecting the vehicle is very crucial. Going back to our confined animals, a lot of times we hand feed those animals at a grain bin. So the trucks are coming onto our place to fill our grain bins there. Always important to just have a cleaning and disinfection area outside of our perimeter buffer area. Next one we'll talk about is our designated parking area. This should then again be a place where visitors or customers park away from the barns outside of the perimeter buffer area. We also have some things that are a little harder to see here in black, these black lines, which would be our carcass removal pathways and carcass disposal and pickup location. Honestly, this isn't the perfect example for me, but we need to make sure those carcasses are getting as far away from our live animals as possible and outside of our perimeter buffer area. Not only do carcasses attract things that can potentially carry diseases, but they also are just a growing, they're an incubator for bacteria and for other pathogens to grow and incubate there. They can be very, very harmful to disease outbreak. This is, like I said, a relatively simple concept. We'll talk more about this as we get further down the presentation, but I think a very, very good strategy to implement, one that honestly just gets you thinking about your operation and whatnot. Learn more. For the sake of time, we're not going to watch this whole video, but in a RLO type setting with an extension agent, I thought this was a very neat video that somebody could watch that's talking about some biosecurity strategies in a beef cattle operation. Just thought provoking. It would be very positive for somebody to use in a RLO type setting, talking to young livestock producers. So how does this relate to Rogers? And I kind of highlight three different points here. The first one, entry livestock producers would presumably fall under the laggard section of adopting this innovation. Biosecurity is something that's not a new concept, and they should be in the laggard section. They're just now getting into the industry. But I think it's important to show people that there's a whole other group of people that are doing what that they hope to do successfully, that are implementing biosecurity strategies. So not that I think we need to harp on new livestock producers for lagging behind, but I think it would be important for them to show them that there is an entire group of other successful livestock producers that are all often implementing biosecurity strategies to aid in the success of their operation. Uh, Convergence versus divergence. This is extremely important here. And convergence is simply accepting the idea of implementing biosecurity strategy, while divergence is rejecting. I think this is more of a thought provoking topic for either the change agent or opinion leader, whoever's presenting this particular slideshow in this RLO. we need to emphasize the importance of convergence. We need to almost sell these new livestock producers on why they need to adopt this strategy, not only for the safety of their business, but for the safety of the livestock industry as we know it. And effective biosecurity on one operation is great, but a truly successful biosecurity plan would encompass all of the livestock operations in the world. So I think that's how it relates to convergence versus divergence. And the last one is reinvention is very plausible outcome for the innovative adopter. I recently sat in a meeting with some people from Texas Animal Health Commission, and their attitude is 100% accurate. Biosecurity should be reinvented. It should be customized to fit the operation, their needs, their goals. Everybody's in a different geographical landscape with different size properties, different barn layouts. And so they need to make the plan work for them. They don't need to make it impossible for themselves to farm effectively, but they do need to adopt this idea, and reinvention can occur with them as they continue to adopt a biosecurity plan. Application of this RLO. This would be something I would sit down with if I were to be the one presenting this RLO to a group of new young livestock producers. And I will attach this biosecurity template for livestock and poultry that was provided by the Center for Food Security and Public Health in my submission here. This would be what I would do to make sure people understood the concept of this presentation is I would hand them this hard copy, and I would be more than happy to sit there and assist them in filling out an initial biosecurity plan so they could take it back with them to their operation and continue to customize it and reinvent this. And I think our convergent rate would be much higher if we kind of sat there and helped them. So this is the application of the RLO. It was We went over a lot of the major strategies within this 12-page document. There's some deeper explanations on how you can make these strategies work for you. And I would sit there and I would assist them in developing this biosecurity plan. I think that is the main section of this RLO, is to not just leave them with a presentation and give them a couple of quiz questions to see if they learned, but to truly sit down with the young livestock producers and give them an opportunity to ask questions. Will potentially show me a map of their farm and on Google Earth or Google Maps and say, hey, this is the layout. This is something I've kind of thought about and struggled with. How could you implement, a perimeter buffer area here or a line of separation or a carcass removal tactic? All those things, along with vaccination protocols and, sanitation and disinfection, are all outlined in this. So that's the major application of this RLO, and I think a very helpful one to go along with that. And here are my list of references. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you find this RLO useful. Like I said, I think it would be extremely valuable for extension agents to have in their back pocket and a nice, neat, organized package whenever they get new livestock producers within their county to sit down and share with them. Thank you all. Have a good one.